Roughly 1 in every 3 people who walk this earth today profess to be Christian. They claim Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. But is he really? Do Christians today truly follow the religion which Jesus taught? Or was his call hijacked somewhere along the way? Remember, Jesus told us to watch out for false teachers, deceivers who appear as wolves in sheep's clothing. A reminder that the most dangerous enemies are the ones who you...
Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Give me a vortex up in the chat if I can be heard, family. Y'all already know. Back in the building. You did. Give me a vortex in the chat if I can be heard. Y'all see the title, Roman and Jewish Conspiracies. Saul of Tarsus, Herodian, and Roman inspired. We're going to deal with some intelligence today, boy. Yeah. Drop them vortices in the chat. Let's work.
You think you can trust. The ones who infiltrate and devour a flock from within. Jesus Christ, the Good Shepherd, told us exactly who to follow after him. He named his chief disciple, Simon Peter, as his successor, the rock upon which his church would be built. But somehow, another man, not Simon Peter, ended up becoming the dominant voice of Christianity. Roughly half of the books which fill the pages of the New Testament were written by one man, a man who never even met Jesus, a man with a deeply rooted hatred for Christians, a man called Saul of Tarsus, better known today as the Apostle Paul. Paul's teachings are so influential, some have even dubbed him the founder of Christianity, a claim which reveals a big problem. Paul's doctrine is often at odds with the message of Jesus, which begs the question, was Paul an apostle or an impostor, a messenger from Christ, or an antichrist who has led 1/3 of the world's population astray? Join us on Al Rayat Al Sud satellite channel as we tell the story of the man who stole the religion of Jesus and founded Christianity as we know it today. Paul, the false apostle.
Founder of Christianity. That deal said a hellfire named Paul. Man, what is going on? Let's keep cooking.
The year is roughly 36 AD. The place, Jerusalem. This is the holy city where the teachings of Christ once rang out into the air. But now, just a few years after the crucifixion, the winds have changed direction and some people are on a hunt for Christian blood. An angry mob zeroes in on a godly man by the name of Stephen, drags him out of the city, and begins to stone him. They lay their coats in front of a young man called Saul of Tarsus, who fully consented to Stephen's death and later admitted, "And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him." This story alone is shocking enough, but this was not the only time Saul got his hands dirty. Saul was born into a strict Jewish family and spent his youth studying under the famous rabbi Gamaliel.
Gamaliel. Interesting. He was there at the fall of Jerusalem some 50 years later.
The man who trained him as a Pharisee. These are the same Pharisees whom Jesus referred to as vipers and sons of the devil. Saul's zeal for the law led him to become an inquisitor of the Jerusalem temple's priesthood. Saul was a bloodhound and admitted to mercilessly chasing and killing many Christians. According to the book of Acts, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples when he had a transformative experience on the road to Damascus, a vision of the resurrected Jesus. It was that experience which allegedly changed everything. Saul became Paul and declared himself a freshly converted apostle of Christ. But there is a problem with this story. Paul can't quite get the details straight. It is considered a red flag when a person can't keep their story straight. When detectives work to solve a crime, they test witnesses on the consistency of their accounts. If the story keeps changing, suspicions arise. You might assume that a vision of Jesus would be memorable enough to stick in someone's memory, but the so-called Apostle Paul tells 3 different versions of his apparition on the road to Damascus, recorded in the book of Acts.
Oh, most don't know that, so your boy can't get his story straight up. Not he can't get his story straight, but y'all, the reason that's so important is because his whole claim to being an apostle is based off his vision or his story. Most don't know that his story has holes in it. It's inconsistent. Oh, watch this.
In Acts chapter 9, verse 7, we find one account where Paul claims that his travel companions did not see Jesus, but heard his voice.
Okay, so Acts chapter 9, those that were with him didn't see Jesus, but they did hear his voice. Okay? There's Acts chapter 9, like 1 through 8. You'll run right to it. They didn't see him, but they did hear his voice. Now watch this.
And in Acts chapter 22, verse 9, we find another version of the story. They saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. In one version, Paul is blinded for 3 days. In another, he makes no mention of such a thing. We are left wondering, which version should we believe? But perhaps a more important question to ask is, why does this all matter? It matters because the entire validity of Paul as a messenger hinges on this story. This is the single proof he used to convince people to take him seriously as a messenger from God, having never met Jesus in the flesh.
Y'all hear that? The reason why this is a major league deal that his stories don't line up is because that's his whole claim to being an apostle is based off his stories. He never met the man. He never met Jesus while he was living. But you're about this was writing about him before even the Gospels even came out. Saul was writing first. You know what I mean? Like he got a whole bunch to say about a man that he never met. He got a whole lot to say. You feel me? Watch this. Watch this. Watch this.
This is all he has to go on, and it just so happens that it cannot be verified by anybody. There is no mention of Paul in the Gospels by Jesus or
it can't be verified by nobody, meaning he doesn't even have a witness. He ain't got no witnesses. His witnesses, they heard the voice, didn't see him, saw the light, but didn't hear the voice. Which one is it? Look at this.
anyone else for that matter. Nobody gives Paul the title of apostle other than Paul himself. So we have to ask these questions. Was Paul a man who saw the error in his ways and turned his life around? Or did he carry out his original agenda, utilizing a different strategy, destroying the Christian faith from within? In any case,
always remember what his original mission was, to destroy the whole movement. So did he really have a change of heart and, it's all good, or was he working for someone else? Was the whole mission the whole time to overthrow the Messianic movement in Palestine? Because they looked at us like we was all radical, militant. You know what I mean? But those were your Messianic brews, the ones that was fighting for Jerusalem. You know what I mean? That was a whole Messianic war. So you got Paul writing before the Gospels even come out about a man that he's never met, right? But the whole thing is to subdue that revolutionary liberation, freedom fighter spirit that the brothers in them had, man. Look at this. There's a reason why over like half of your New Testament is Paul, supposedly. Think that's a coinky dink? Look at this.
One thing is certain. Paul's claim to apostleship directly contradicts what Jesus taught. Throughout his ministry, Jesus had many disciples. At one point, he amassed followers in the thousands. But there was always an inner circle of 12 men, handpicked by Jesus. That number, 12, was no accident. There was a specific purpose behind it. Talking about his second coming, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." These words demonstrate just how important the sacred number 12 is. How could 11 or 13 apostles judge 12 tribes? The disciples themselves understood the significance of this number. After Jesus left them, the remaining 11 apostles set out to replace the fallen one from among them, Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus. Praying for divine guidance, the men drew lots, and in the end, they reported that God chose Matthias to be the 12th disciple. There was one important criteria for the selection. Therefore, it is necessary to choose one of the men who have been with us the whole time the Lord Jesus was living among us, beginning from John's baptism to the time when Jesus was taken up.
Most don't know there's a criteria. There's a criteria to being an apostle. It's right in the book of Acts chapter 1. And just so happened, Paul don't fit that. Paul nor anybody today claiming that they are an apostle, anything like that. He don't fit that. It had to be one of the men who have been with us the whole time the Lord Jesus was living among us, beginning from John's baptism to the time when Yeshua was taken up from us. So that right there is the criteria. You had to be a day one. You had to know him. And you had to be there rocking from the immersion by his cousin, YAH'KI the Baptist, all the way up to his ascension. If true about this, if you don't fit that, then you ain't no apostle then. You ain't no apostle. You may be self-proclaimed, but you're not one according to what this is saying. You know what I mean? Easy work.
Up from us. So imagine the confusion of the 12 disciples when, years later, Paul came along and inserted himself into the equation as the 13th disciple. Paul, a man who never met Jesus, certainly didn't qualify to be one of them. But that didn't stop Paul from making some dramatic changes to the religion of Jesus. And the early Christians did not consider Paul to be an authority in the same right as the 12. One of the most notable new concepts which Paul brought to Christianity was the abolishment of the Old Testament law. Claiming to speak on behalf of Christ, Paul said, "For sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under the law, but under grace." He claimed that Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, "Cursed is everyone who is hung on a pole." Basically, Paul argued that when Jesus died, so too did the law. The old covenant between God and man was overturned in favor of a new one by which all sins are forgiven of the one who simply says, "I believe." There is just one major problem with Paul's logic, though. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus appeared to the 12 after the crucifixion, saying this, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." And Jesus clearly commanded them to keep the commandments. "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill them." Jesus was a reformer. His mission was to bring things back to the old ways of theology. He came to guide people back to the religion of God. Jesus, the long-awaited Jewish Messiah, affirmed the message of the Hebrew prophets before him. He adhered to the Jewish law and never once indicated that the law of the Old Testament prophets would or should be abolished. In fact, he said, "It is easier for heaven and earth to disappear than for the least stroke of a pen to drop out of the law." So why did Paul come out and teach the opposite? Just as Jesus said, "If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." Paul said, "No one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law." It simply couldn't make sense unless Paul had another agenda. Paul initially preached to people of his same religious background, the Jews. But when he found that he could not convince many that Jesus was divine, he went outside of Israel to the Gentiles. But once again, he faced difficulty. The Gentiles who were open to accepting Christ were not observers of Jewish law. Their food wasn't kosher. But the biggest obstacle Paul faced with the Gentiles was the circumcision law, the covenant between God and the believers, dating back to Prophet Abraham. At first, Paul encouraged Gentile converts to follow the law. He even had his companion, Timothy, circumcised, as confirmed in Acts 16. But somewhere along the way, he changed his tune. The law was an obstacle standing in his way, so he cast it aside. Jesus said, "Follow the law down to the letter," but Paul said the exact opposite. Not only did he remove its obligation, he went so far as to call it harmful. "I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourselves be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace." Where was he getting this from? It certainly wasn't from the man who Jesus named as his successor, Simon Peter. When Jesus knew he wouldn't be around much longer, he handed the keys of the kingdom to his successor, Simon Peter, stating, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven."
It's going down in this deal, baby. Oh, if y'all getting a little understanding, go ahead and give me a vortex up in the chat. Check that. I just put the link in the chat for y'all that want the link to that documentary. It's like 52 minutes long. Check it out. Of course, we ain't gonna go over the whole thing right now. You feel me? Some of the stuff that the video was talking about, I found it quite interesting because we ran across a lot of them findings a few years ago. Like, hold on, man. We got to relook at some of this. We got to check some of this out. You feel me? I see everybody in the chat. Abundant love, favor, grace, peace, wisdom, balance, and all the above. I salute you all in the name of the great spirit, the creator. Bless up, bless up, bless up. We all good here. Let me click over and show y'all a little something real quick. See how we looking. Now, to verify some of the stuff that the documentary was talking about, this is a doc. Matter of fact, a Google doc from a previous debate I ended up having about with Pola Rizzo or Saul or Paul of Tarsus, a false apostle. And just to verify some of this real quick, you know what I mean? Verify some of that and get some understanding. All right, that documentary is on point. It's on point. A lot of us, a lot of our people who identify as messianic brews, believe it or not, you know what I mean? It's your boy Saul. Boy Saul of Tarsus. Right? Especially him. He was writing before the Gospels even came out. The Gospels came out after the war with Rome. After 70 AD is when the Gospels came out. Paul was writing in the 50s, in the 60s. Feel me? So understand that when you're dealing with chronology, you're dealing with the New Testament. If you want to go by the order of what was written first, then we got to roll with Paul. Paul's letters, his chronological. Chronologically speaking, Paul's letters are older than Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were written before that. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to show some of this so we can go ahead and work. I see y'all in the building. Let's get it. Let's get it. All right. Now look at this. All right. Was Saul of Paul of Tarsus a false apostle, or his teachings hostile toward the original apostles? Acts chapter 1, 21 through 26. Show y'all what we're dealing with here. All right. Wherefore of these men which have companied with us all the time that the Master Yeshua went in and out among us. So this right here is the criteria for being an apostle. You had to be a day one. And we're talking about an apostle according to the Bible. You see that? You had to be a day one. You had to be a day one. Right? You had to been there. And it's letting you know the time period. Beginning from the baptism of YAH'KI, John, until that same day that he was taken up from us, must one be ordained. Must one be ordained. Must one be ordained to be a witness with us of his resurrection. Y'all see this? Y'all see this? This is the criteria. So anybody today claiming today an apostle, they lying. And anybody who don't fit this criteria is not an apostle. You may be a disciple. You may be a student. You may be a devout worshiper and all that extra. You understand? But you're not an apostle. So we got right off the gate, the man is a self-proclaimed apostle. He wasn't a day one. He didn't witness the immersion, and he didn't witness the ascension of Yeshua according to the Bible. So within Bible, you got a problem. You got a clash between Ebionites and Nazarenes and all them, and you got the followers of Paul's way. You see? Look at this. Look at this. It's real easy. Let's ask yourself, does he fit the bill? Is he a day one? Did he witness the immersion? Did he witness the ascension? Is the answer no to both? Then he's not an apostle. He's something else. And they appointed two, Joseph called Barsabas, who was surnamed Justice, and Matthias. And they prayed. They did what? And they prayed and said, Thou, Lord, which knowest the hearts of all men, show whether these two thou hast chosen, that he may take part of this what? Ministry and who? Apostleship. This right here is ordination. In order for you to be an ordained apostle, you had to go through the ordination. You had to go through this ritual right here. Here's the ritual. And they gave forth their lots, and the lot fell upon Matthias, and he was numbered with the 11 apostles. So this is what it is. Apostleship, no excuses. It had to be a day one. All right, had to be around and witness the Messiah coming in and going out amongst the other apostles. Had to witness the Messiah's baptism. Had to witness the Messiah's ascension. These are the requirements for all apostles. Saul or anyone claiming to be an apostle outside of these requirements is false before the Creator. Look at this. Joseph and Matthias were selected by the apostles, so obviously they were what? They were around to be witnesses, meaning they witnessed the immersion and the ascension. All right. The apostles prayed and then cast lots. This is the ritual. They got to pray, then they got to cast lots. They got to throw down like these ancient dice. And whichever way the dice fall, you understand, proves the divine will. Now look at this. The apostles prayed and then cast lots. The lot fell on Matthias. He became the 12th apostle. This was the ordination process an apostle had to go through. Saul's whole claim to being an apostle was solely based on his revelation and not on the above requirements. You see? That's why this is important. That's what that video was talking about. His whole claim to being an apostle is based on his vision. It ain't based on what we just read. Right? If you understand that, Paul's claim to being an apostle was based off his vision and not on the requirements according to the Bible for being an apostle. Give me a 9 up in the chat, man. Let's make sure we get some understanding. Let's make sure we're understanding what's being said here. All right? Well, if he didn't get it that way, then that means he got it some other way. You see what I'm saying? If he ain't get it this way, he got it some other way. That's what happened. Right? His whole claim to being an apostle was based off his vision, the proverbial road to Damascus. That's all that's about. His vision. See that? Look at it. Saul of Tarsus defends his ministry. Why he got to defend it? That means it's being attacked. Why he got to defend something? The truth about this, if he's in agreement with the apostles and all them, why does he have to defend his ministry? I mean, who in the first century got enough authority and rank from Jerusalem to challenge Paul and what he's doing out here? Think about it. Saul of Tarsus defends his ministry, but I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after who? Man. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Jesus Christ. So according to Saul of Tarsus, the following is true. The gospel he preaches doesn't come after mortal men. He didn't receive his gospel from mortal men, nor was he taught what he preaches by mortal men. Admitting this, he just killed himself, y'all. Admitting this, he means he wasn't taught by the apostles of the Messiah, nor of the earthly Yeshua before he was murdered. Y'all see this? If he didn't get it from man, that means he didn't get it from none of the apostles nor the Messiah in the flesh. He didn't get it from the apostles after him either, or the apostles before him either. What's this really about? Look at this. Saul's whole claim to being an apostle is based on his revelation that he experienced on the famous road to Damascus. A self-proclaimed apostle with 3 different conversion stories. Look at this. Acts chapter 9, 1, 3 through 5, and 7. Let's see. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And the men which journeyed with him, look at this, y'all. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. So they heard the voice of Jesus, but they did not see him. That's Acts chapter 9, y'all. They heard the voice of Jesus, but they did not see him. According to this conversion account about Saul of Tarsus, the following is true. A light from heaven surrounded Saul. Saul fell to the earth and heard the voice of Jesus. The men with him didn't fall. The men with him heard the voice of Jesus, but didn't see Jesus. That's why you got to slow down and extrapolate. You feel me? We just got all that out of that. Saul was the only one that failed. He heard the voice of Jesus. The men with him didn't fall. They heard the voice, but they didn't see him. Acts 22, 6-9. It came to pass that as I made my journey and was come near unto Damascus about noon, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me. And I fell into the ground and heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And they that were with me saw indeed the light and were afraid, but they heard not the voice. But they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. Look at that. In Acts 9, they heard the voice. They heard the voice. In Acts 22, they didn't hear the voice. They just saw the light. Look at this. In Acts 9. In Acts 9. The men with him heard the voice, right? They heard the voice, but they didn't see him. Down here, they didn't hear his voice. Acts 22:9. And they that were with me saw indeed the light and were afraid, but they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. We got a contradiction. Did the men with you hear the voice of Jesus or not? And again, why did Mally seem like you being petty? How, when this is his whole claim to being an apostle, one sent forth with authority? You see, it don't match. It don't match. I don't even know why you trying to make that match. How does that match? They don't match at all. Did they hear it or didn't they hear the voice? Did they see the light with Jesus or did they not see the light with Jesus? Did you fall to the ground or did all y'all fall to the ground? I remember that scene in Menace. That scene in Menace. You know you done fucked up, right? You see? That's what's happening here, y'all. That's what's happening. His story got holes in it. All right? A great light, according to this conversion account about Saul of Tarsus, the following is true. Acts 22. A great light from heaven surrounded Saul. The men with him saw that light. Saul falls to the ground. Saul heard the voice of Jesus. The men with Saul didn't hear the voice. Didn't hear the voice of Jesus. But in Acts 9, they did hear the voice. Acts 26, 12-15. Look at this. At midday, O king, I saw in the way a light from heaven above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me and them which journeyed with me. And when we all were fallen to the earth, and when we were all fallen, when we all were fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And I said, who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. According to this conversion account about Saul of Tarsus, the following is true. A light from heaven surrounded Saul and those with him. They all fell to the earth. As anyone can see, these three revelation conversion accounts contradict each other. Why is this so important? Remember what Saul of Tarsus said earlier. His apostleship and the gospel he preaches is solely and wholly based on his revelation. If his conversion account, if his revelation account has holes in it, then we must naturally question his authority or apostleship. Take a closer look. Acts 9:7. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless. Stood. They didn't fall. Stood speechless, hearing a voice, seeing no man. Acts 22:9. And they that were with me saw indeed the light and were afraid, but they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. Acts 26:14. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Acts 26:14. You feel me? So as we see the whole thing contradicts itself. So Saul openly defends his ministry and boldly declares the gospel he preaches wasn't given to him by a mortal man, but by a revelation from Jesus Christ, the only mortal men who could challenge Saul's authority as an apostle on a level to where Saul had to respond would be the true apostles. If y'all get some understanding, give me an 8 up in the chat. I don't want to go too fast. I want to slow roll this for y'all. Give me an 8 up in the chat if you understand. If you understand that Paul's whole conversion story has holes in it. He can't get a story together. And his entire claim to being an apostle is based off these stories, these accounts. Because he don't fit the criteria. You feel me? He don't fit the criteria. Make sure I'm cool. Y'all hear me? Okay. I ain't cut off or nothing. No, we all good. Yeah, because he don't fit the criteria of being an apostle. You see? He don't fit it. I ain't making this up. And then why is he constantly defending his ministry? 1 Corinthians 9, 1-5. Am I not an apostle? No, you're not. Am I not free? So he feels he's not under the jurisdiction of James and all the apostles. Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? That's questionable. Or not ye might work in the Lord. So he admits his authority as an apostle is being questioned. And that the church at Corinth is his work, or as he puts it, my work. Now see this? He's defending his ministry. Why? Are you catching smoke from the real ones? That's what's happening. Look at this. If I be not an apostle unto others, yet doubtless I am to you. For the seal of mine apostleship are ye in the Lord. For the seal of mine apostleship are ye in the Lord. He admits that he's not an apostle unto others, and that the church of Corinth is the proof or seal of his apostleship. So not the requirements and ordination ritual for being an apostle mentioned above in the book of Acts. Not that. Right? The proof of his apostleship, he claims, is the church of Corinth. Wow. Look at this. 1 Corinthians 9:3. My answer to them that do examine me is this. He admits there is a group of men that are casting judgment on his supposed authority. These are Paul's letters. We just read past them so fast and we never slow down and say, hold on. What is he admitting to? What is he saying here? And then ask yourself, well, who got the authority to even challenge what he bringing out? Who? Look at this. Have we not power to eat and to drink? Obviously, there is a certain level of authority an apostle has. If Saul's apostleship is being questioned, then so is his what? His authority. Look at this, verse 5. Have we not power? Have we not power to lead about a sister, a wife, as well as other apostles, and as the brethren of the master and Cephas? He admits to the existence of the true apostles and included the brothers, sure about this, y'all, the brothers of Yahshua among them, as well as Peter or Cephas. So he understands there are real apostles out there. His apostleship is being challenged. Amplified Bible, 1 Corinthians 9:3. This is my defense to those who would put me on trial and interrogate me concerning my authority as an apostle. Y'all ain't talking about Ned the wino. There's only one group of brothers that can call him to the flow concerning what it is he claiming. You know what I mean? You got to call him to the flow. Look at this. Look at this. First Corinthians 9:5, Aramaic and Bible in plain English. And why is it illegal for us to travel with a sister/wife as other apostles and as the brothers of our Lord and as Kepha? 1 Corinthians 9:5. Look at this. Galatians 1:1. Paul, an apostle, not of men, neither by man. He got to keep running that, don't he? There's only one group of men, you understand, that were out here pushing what Yahshua told him. Look at this. Paul, an apostle, not of men, neither by man, but by Jesus Christ and God the Father, who raised him from the dead. Verse 2. And all the brethren which are with me unto the churches of Galatia. Look at this. Verse 1 is yet another example of Saul declaring to be an apostle, but not of men or a man. The only men who had the power and authority to challenge Saul concerning the Messiah are the apostles. I got to remember that. He's writing in direct response to his ministry being challenged. Everywhere he go, he's getting called to the floor. Notice Paul makes it clear he's talking about a specific group of people that are with him, as opposed to who or whom he's about to go in about. Notice Saul goes to the extent of cursing and condemning anyone who taught another gospel than his. Look at this. The word gospel proves he's not addressing the biblical Sadducees and Pharisees. Notice how much he's about to use the term. Galatians 1:6-11. I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that calls you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. Even though he says another, he still admits that what is being taught is still a gospel or messianic. It's just different than his gospel. You see that? When he's saying another gospel, so that means that's somebody else out there talking about Yahshua that he doesn't approve of. Look at this. Which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and will pervert the gospel of Christ. Saul admits this other gospel is trouble in the church of Galatia and is a perversion from his doctrine called what? The gospel of Christ. He's just making this stuff up. Look at this. Look at this. But though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be what? Accursed. According to Saul, this other gospel and anyone pushing it, including an angel, is condemned. Do y'all see that? Y'all see that? There's only one group of people out here pushing the gospel. You know what I mean? Trip off that. Pushing it. As we said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that ye have received, let him be accursed. Any man would include the true apostles in Jerusalem. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? Any man would include the true apostles in Jerusalem. After all, they are men. Ooh-wee. Give me 7 up in the chat. Give me 7 up in the chat. If y'all understand what this deal is really about, you know what I mean? Give me 7 up in the chat. Watch this. All right, let's stop this real quick. All right, let me show y'all something. It ain't real hard. It ain't real hard at all. Yeah, man, anybody connected, they all suspect. The Flavians, the Herodians, the Alexanders, you gotta look at all of it with a jaundiced eye. I would look at it all with a jaundiced eye. I mean, we should naturally be doing that anyway, though. You feel me? Look at that shit with a jaundiced eye, man. I mean, you gotta thoroughly inspect it and see what it's really about. All right. We'll come back to there. This is where we going next. This is where we going next. All right. Excellent read. Excellent read. You feel me? Operation Messiah, St. Paul, Roman intelligence, and the birth of Christianity. I highly recommend this one. It's pretty good. And whoever that cat is on that mosaic right there, he looks suspect. You can't trust him. Look at whoever that's a picture of, man. That's crazy. All right, we're going to read some of this, y'all. We're going to read some of this and get some understanding, all right? Read through some of this stuff here. See where we at with it. Hold on, let's see. All right, good to go. All right, Saul the Persecutor, chapter 4 of St. Paul and Roman intelligence. Saul, prior to his conversion, was involved in persecuting the followers of Jesus. This activity is mentioned in Acts chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 22, and also chapter 26, as well as in Paul's own letters, 1 Corinthians 15:9, Galatians 1:13, 23, and Philippians 3:6. But as usual, there are serious incompatibilities in these accounts. Really? The degree to which Saul persecuted the followers of the way, the identity of these people, their locale, the purpose and extent of Saul's persecutions, and his jurisdiction are still subjects of debate. The major problem is that the material in Acts and in the letters does not always agree. Y'all heard that? There are things in Acts that disagree with what Paul's letters are saying. Look at this right here. We thus know distressingly little about Saul's persecution of Jesus' followers. For whom did Saul work? For whom did Saul work while performing these acts? You never asked yourself that. Who gave him the authority to straight do this? He had to have some type of authority. He had to have some type of authority. Dude, shout out to my brother Cosmon Cal in the building. Like, subscribe, share. Y'all go over there, tap in with the God, man. Solid brother right there. Look at this right here. It says right here. It says, for whom did Saul work while performing these acts? In whose name did he persecute? Who were his victims? It's clear that Acts uses Saul's persecuting as a foil against which to display his later missionary activity to advantage. So this bias offers little help. Given the gaps in our knowledge, it is no wonder that scholars have come to no consensus on the nature of or the motivations for Saul's life as a persecutor. The picture given in New Testament sources of Saul in the days before his conversion are contradictory and who? Suspect. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Here's it. Look at this right here. The stoning of Stephen. What's up? Yeah, but here, stone up there for a second, all right? The picture given in New Testament sources of Saul in the days before his conversion are contradictory and suspect. Stoning of Stephen. Saul's first appearance in the sources is as a young man in Jerusalem around 36 CE. A controversy broke out in the Jerusalem synagogue. Saul is depicted as an approving official who watched the stoning of Saint Stephen and at whose feet the crowd placed Stephen's garments. Although he is compliant in this grisly deed through his passivity, he would later act more actively and brutally in such repression. We are told he broke into houses to drag men and women off to prison without due process. Saul wasn't playing. Slave master. In Acts 9:1, Saul appears as a bitter enemy. Hold on. Bad job. Page that on. Here we go right here. As a bitter enemy to the Jesus followers, breathing threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord. They are jailed, Acts 4:3, beaten, Acts 5:40, and threatened, Acts 4:18. The turning point in Acts 7 comes when Stephen is tried by a religious court for preaching against Moses, Acts 6:11, and then is stoned to death, Acts 7:58. In Acts, jury in general is involved on this event. The author shows this by having Jews from throughout the diaspora first accuse Stephen, then by having the people with their leaders carry out the arrest, Acts 6:12. Here, Luke also used an abundance of third-person plural pronouns so that we read in the English translation that they stirred up the people and they came upon him and seized him and brought him before the council, Acts 6:12. And they set up false witnesses, Acts 6:13. A general persecution follows in all Nazarenes. And all Nazarenes, except the apostles, flee Jerusalem. Acts 8:1. There it is. There it is. Putting Saul at the execution of Stephen creates the impression that his adherence to Phariseeism caused him to show violent hostility toward the followers of Jesus. Although we are told by Acts that Saul was harrying the church, Acts 8:3, we are not told by what authority or on whose orders he was carrying out this persecution. First, the word church is a misnomer because this group of Jewish believers did not separate itself from the Jewish temple as a different religious entity. Secondly, this harrying was clearly not a matter of merely individual action on Saul's part, for sending people to prison could only be done by some kind of official. Saul must have been acting on behalf of some authority. And who this authority was can be gleaned from later incidents in which Saul is shown acting on behalf of Caiaphas, the high priest. Anyone, however, with knowledge of the religious and political scene at this time in Judea can detect a serious problem with this interpretation. The high priest was not a Pharisee. The high priest was not a Pharisee, but a Sadducee. And the Sadducees were bitterly opposed to the Pharisees. How is it that Saul, allegedly an enthusiastic Pharisee of Pharisees, is acting hand in glove with the Sadducean high priest? There is also the possibility that Saul was working for the Romans. Oh, yeah, don't say. Huh? There is also the possibility that Saul was working for the Romans. If these dissidents were wanted for political reasons, then the Romans might not have left their investigation entirely in the hands of the high priest. So the questions are, was there a persecution of Jesus' followers? Who was carrying it out and who were its victims? Look at this. All right, Stephen's martyrdom is the great turning point in Acts. It inaugurates a period of Jewish persecution of Christianity. Acts clearly links the persecution with Stephen's death. In fact, it starts on the same date. In reality, the persecution had started much earlier, namely when Jesus was still active. According to the Gospels, the authorities work with informers. See, so ain't nothing new. They had CIs, confidential informant. Confidential informant. In your motion of discovery, writing your paperwork. CI number 1. Or CS1, confidential source. You see? Them intelligence gathering and using, using intelligence, you feel me, or espionage as a way to win a war ain't nothing new. It's been happening. Right? It ain't started with just the COINTELPRO dealing with the civil rights. This was going on back 2,000 years ago at least. According to the Gospels, the authorities worked with informers like Judas and then came after the leader of the movement, recruiting an informer, sending him out on a mission, evaluating his information, and sending out a group of officers to arrest the target is what we describe as good intelligence work. Bag drop, boy. Shout out to my brother Louis. They were sad, you see. Them Sadducees. Them sad niggas you see right there. You see what we call good intelligence work? Read it again. Recruiting an informer, sending him out on a mission, evaluating his information, and sending out a group of officers to arrest the target is what we describe as good intelligence work. Others might describe it as persecution. That's what's going on. It is only after Stephen's martyrdom in Acts that the term the Jews is used so frequently in a pejorative sense. Yet this turning point is never attested to outside Acts. Neither are Stephen and his martyrdom. The narrative in Acts is very little help in reconstructing the nature of the dispute between Stephen and other members of his synagogue. If indeed the incident is historical, one scholar has argued that the incident was probably confined to the synagogue of the freedmen and did not involve the high priest at all. Acts, however, implies that the persecution was initiated at the highest levels of the Jewish establishment by who? Caiaphas, and the members of his council. Why was the high priest? Why was the high priest doing this? And what did he have against the Nazarenes? Oh, hey, boy, we cooking today. We cooking today. Give me a 5 up in the chat if y'all get some understanding, man. Give me a 5 up in this deal, man. Let's cook. Yeah. For whom was Saul? I'm going to read again. Why was the high priest doing this, and what did he have against the Nazarene? For whom was Saul working? The only circumstance under which the high priest would employ his police force. Dang, not the police force. To employ his police force to arrest and imprison people would be if these people had shown themselves in some way to be a political threat to the Sadducean hierarchy and the Roman regime. In other words, you ain't persecuting good old milquetoast heathen Christians from the northern ice caps who turn the other cheek and pay taxes. That ain't who you persecuting. You ain't taking up arms against that. You taking up arms against those who's actively waging war with you. Y'all see this? The only circumstance under which the high priest would employ his police force to arrest and imprison people would be if these people had shown themselves in some way to be a political threat. This is political, y'all. A political threat to the Sadducean hierarchy and the Roman regime. If Saul was employed by the high priest to arrest people and imprison them, it can only mean one thing. It can only mean one thing. And that is that Saul was a member of the high priest's police force. Pardon people, boy. Pardon people. If Saul was employed by the high priest to arrest people, and that's what it says in Acts, and imprison them, it can only mean one thing. And that is that Saul was a member of the high priest's police force. Wow. It would have been his job. It would have been his job to arrest anyone belonging to a movement that threatened the status quo. What kind of Jew might have taken up political police work in the service of Caiaphas? Now, remember them boys say they don't got no king but Caesar. Y'all remember that? That's in John 19. We don't got no king but Caesar. Crucify him. What kind of Jew might have taken up political police work in the service of Caiaphas? The police force of the high priest was no doubt an eclectic group consisting of junior priests with allegiance to the Sadducean party or belonging to those few families from whom the high priest was traditionally selected. Added to these were mercenaries of various kinds, including Jews or even non-Jews. Such mercenaries may have been relatively indifferent to Jewish nationalistic feelings and were perfectly prepared to endure the unpopularity that came to those willing to sell themselves to anyone wielding power in the interest of a hated military occupation. There are a number of passages tying Saul to the high priest. In Acts the 5th chapter, Saul is described as saying he cast his vote against the followers of Jesus, thus helping to condemn them to death. This can only refer to the voting of the Sanhedrin or council of elders, which was convened to try capital cases. So if he telling you he cast in his vote, y'all, that means they was out here indicting these Nazarenes. They was indicting them, locking them up, arresting them, detaining them, and even killing them. And look, the beautiful thing about all this is, y'all, we're using the Bible. The Bible will tell you all this. You just read past it, right? You ain't getting to the history of how you compile all this. You just read past it. He cast his vote against the followers of Jesus, thus helping to condemn them who? To death. This can only refer to the voting of the Sanhedrin. That's the Israelite High Court or Supreme Court, which was convened to try capital cases. So what Acts is claiming for its hero, Saul, is that he was a one-time member of the Sanhedrin. This is highly unlikely. If it were true, Saul surely would have mentioned it in his letters when listing his credentials as a Pharisee. All over the place. Is he a Pharisee or is he a Sadducee? A Sadducee? Which one is it? Because if he's a Pharisee, how is he working for the Sadducees? Look at it. The subject of the Pharisees brings up another interesting point. We have argued that Saul was probably not a Pharisee, but even those scholars who accept Saul as a member of this group are forced to admit that the evidence seems clear. The Pharisees were friendly to the Nazarenes, really. This would make Saul the only Pharisee who joined forces with the high priest to persecute the movement. In order to get around this conclusion, scholars needed to invent a category into which they could put Paul or Saul other than that of a collaborator. One scholar, for example, argues that Saul belonged to a group or movement among contemporary Jews that enforced within the Jewish community a communal discipline of maintaining the traditional way of life. They wished to oppose pressure from the Roman Empire and its Hellenistic predecessors to adopt the Greek way of life. They believe Saul's description of his own fanaticism, Galatians 1:13-14 and Philippians 3:6, fits just such an understanding of Judaismos and his zeal for the traditions of his ancestors, the traditional Israelite way of life. He was attempting to destroy the early church, the fledgling Jesus movement that was breaking with Jewish communal discipline, as Saul then understood it. According to this interpretation, the religious and political dimensions of the Judaismos movement were inseparable. Its agenda was evidently to maintain the independence of Israel insofar as possible in the context of the Roman Empire. They were to resist the pressures of assimilation while avoiding here it is right here, y'all. While avoiding overtly anti-Roman activity that might provoke Roman military action against Israel. Not everyone accepts the explanation. Not everyone accepts this explanation. We believe members of the Nazarenes. Look at this, y'all. We believe members of the Nazarenes were much more militant than this. We believe members of the Nazarenes were much more militant than this. Among the Nazarenes, there were at least some who wanted complete independence from Rome. Some scholars still believe that Jesus and his followers were among these members of the group and that this led to his execution. So saying the whole thing was way more militant. You feel me? Thus proving that the writing of the Gospels after the war from Rome in Greek was more propaganda. You understand? To destroy the revolutionary uprising that was existing against Rome. And here they like, nah, them Nazarenes was way more militant than this, man. All right. And that the reason for Jesus' death is because you know what I mean, he was part of a more of a revolutionary movement. You know what I mean? Not just walking around telling everybody pay their taxes to the Romans and love every damn body. It is possible that his brother James and some other apostles did not abandon their nationalistic aspirations after Jesus died, as we will see in later events. Some members of the movement were armed and willing to kill Saul. It was armed, huh? There is no evidence to suggest. There is no evidence to suggest that this tradition was started only after Jesus' death. In fact, at the time of his arrest, the movement was armed. Therefore, killing enemies may have been more in the spirit of the original Jesus movement than the pacifist turn the other cheek attitude that Saul started preaching later on. Oh, wait. Is it starting to make some sense to y'all? It's starting to make some sense to you. We're dealing with St. Paul and Roman intelligence. All right? Some always been crazy about Paul, though, man. Like, some don't quite fit with dude. Right? And then we out here starting to bring all this to the light and like, wow, okay, that's what it was. That's what that feeling was. If we accept the possibility that at least some of the Nazarenes were anti-Roman, then the case becomes much clearer. And the groups line up like this. The temple was run by the Sadducees, the Roman quislings who kept the peace in Jerusalem for their Roman overlords. It was their preference and motivations that provide the background for Saul's actions. As we have seen in chapter 2, claiming that Jesus was the Messiah was both a theological and a political statement. It's both theological and political. Jesus himself was executed on a charge of sedition. And anyone continuing his movement or expressing any Hebrew nationalist sentiments had to be watched and controlled, especially if they employed anti-Roman overtones. It was always in the best interest of the Sadducees to keep suspected revolutionary activities under close surveillance and to keep the Romans informed. Y'all hear this? It was always in the best interest of the Sadducees. Those are the priests. Sadducee is the Greek way to say Zadok. Saduk, Sadducee, Zadok. So the Sadducees are claiming to be the sons of Zadok in the New Testament. They're the priests, but trip off this. They link with Rome. The same Rome that destroyed Jerusalem. Especially if they employed anti-Roman overtones. It was always in the best interest of the Sadducees to keep suspected revolutionary activities under close surveillance and to keep the Romans informed before Roman military action was taken and more Jews were suppressed. Better to turn over one or two cranky schismatics than have the Roman boot stomp down on large numbers of Jews in Jerusalem. Jewish attitudes towards messianists may have been mixed, but the Roman response really was. The proclamation of Jesus as Messiah was so politically dangerous. So politically dangerous that the fear of savage Roman reprisals causing irreparable damage moved Jews like Saul to silence messianics. Y'all see this? No, what they did was destroy the movement and gave you their own version. Watered you niggas down, and to this day, we assimilated into Rome. We turned the other cheek with Rome. We paid taxes. We served Rome gods. Everything down to your politics, the plebeians and the patricians, the Romans and the Democrats. We got Coliseum sports. You know what I mean? We got Capitol Hill. Rome had Capitol Line Hill. We got Route 66. They had Apion's Way. Oh, no, you back in Rome. You right back here, smack dead in it. And that shows you that we all affected by what went down. That war 2,000 years ago still has lingering effects to this very day, man. These cats wasn't solid. These cats wasn't standing on business, man. They wasn't standing on business. And that's why I be telling y'all, like, to be arguing about messianic or non-messianic, and you arguing over Torah portions or Paul's letters, y'all, everything that survived are the sellouts. The real ones got put down. Everything that survived and was able to continue and, all that was allowed to continue as long as you wasn't anti-Roman. You wasn't violent against the Romans. They would allow you to preach and teach a form of what you're talking about that's pro-Roman. You see? It was always in the best interest. It was always in the best interest of the Sadducees to keep suspected revolutionary activities under close surveillance and to keep the Romans informed before Roman military action was taken and more Jews were suppressed. You see this? They got to go tell on you. So when they tell you we have no king or God but Caesar, that shows you that the leadership were puppets for the imperial court or the imperial cult, should I say. And these are your leaders. These are the ones that have Sanhedrins and courts and put you to death and indict you and throw a RICO on you, do all that. But they got their authorities from the Herodians or the Romans and the Herodians. You see? It says right here, the proclamation of Jesus as Messiah was so politically dangerous that the fear of savage Roman reprisals causing irreparable damage moved Jews like Saul to silence the Messianics. I don't think you really know who you're dealing with. I don't really know. Look at this. Yeah, Cal P, it is bad, bro. When you really look at it, you be like, man, this is crazy. You dig? The quagmire we in. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. Page 62. Saul's persecutions included the imprisonment and beating of Nazarenes. See that? Shout out to the Essenes and Nazarenes, baby. The real ones, should I say. Love is love. Beating of Nazarenes. They were pressured or even tortured in order to force them to blaspheme, to curse Jesus. Compare Acts 26:11 with 1 Corinthians 12:3. In Acts 26:10, Saul even confesses to having voted for death sentences against Nazarenes. In Galatians 1:13, Saul remarks, "You have heard no doubt of my earlier life in Judaism. I was violently persecuting the church of God and was trying to destroy it." Saul admits that the Nazarenes in Judea accused him of trying to destroy the faith. Galatians 1:23. He confesses in 1 Corinthians 15:9 his unworthiness of the Christian epiphany he received. Last of all, for I am the least of the apostles, unfit to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. In Philippians 3:6, he recalls his achievements as a Pharisee when he was asked to the zeal a persecutor of the church. It seems clear that Saul provoked ugly confrontations with groups of messianics, ridiculed their faith, and attacked them for proclaiming a gospel that was politically dangerous. Politically dangerous. You got to remember this. You got to remember this. Right? You got to stand on business. This thing political. It might provoke a Roman intervention that could threaten the very existence of the people of Israel. Thus, his persecution of the Nazarenes would have been both religious and political, both physical and verbal. How severe were these persecutions? When Paul later describes the slander, insults, afflictions, and physical abuse he allegedly suffered, it may reflect the kind of punishment he once meted out himself. Saul reports that he was subjected to the Jewish punishment of 40 lashes less 1, 2 Corinthians 11:24. Acts makes no mention of Saul receiving any synagogue lashings, but in his letters, Saul recalls countless beatings and imprisonments. 2 Corinthians 11:23-24. Lashings and imprisonments were punishments meted out by legitimate judicial processes in the synagogue. And it is conceivable that Saul might have hauled Jewish messianics, leaders, or influential Nazarenes before the synagogue judges. Or he may have encouraged synagogues to move against the messianics in their midst to discipline them. You know, the messianics were the ones that were standing up against the Roman imperial invasion. Like, we're not about to look at no naked statues of Caesar. Nah, we cool on paying taxes too. We good. Look at this. Some scholars believe the entire persecution theme and Saul's brutality have been exaggerated by Acts to contrast his past with his later apostolic ministry. Scholars question Saul's motives. One opinion is that it is hard to believe that Saul would ever accept the commission as an enforcer to protect the sanctity of the temple. Saul's persecution of messianics would certainly have been because they had spoken out against the temple. Many people had criticized the temple. Jesus had done it, as well as the teacher of righteousness at Qumran, and they had not been persecuted by the Yahudim. Some try to simply limit the nature of the persecution. They refuse to believe that anything Saul did resulted in anyone's torture or death. One scholar believes that Saul did not understand persecution as a procedure that ended in the death of the victim. If Saul persecuted to the utmost, does this refer to the intensity of the persecution or to the intensity of Saul's zeal? Philippians 3:6. Another interpretation is that the phrase "to the utmost" refers only to the maximum allowable lashes. The synagogue could prescribe flogging, 40 lashes less 1, and in rare instances, mob action might lead to stoning. 2 Corinthians 11:25. It has been argued that neither the high priest nor the Sanhedrin had the authority to administer capital punishment in Saul's lifetime. While it is true that capital punishment for political crimes was the sole preserve of the Roman occupying power, the Sanhedrin always had the right religiously to execute by stoning, for example, Stephen. More recently, it has been suggested that not only did persecution end in deaths, but that Paul was personally responsible for the death of apostles, including John, the son of Zebedee. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee-wee-wee. The lone persecutor theory. The lone persecutor theory. Many scholars still persist in seeing all Saul's persecuting activities as a hobby, not a vocation. Saul's commitment to exterminate the Jesus movement would have been an activity, not the result of an office he held, but born out of his own conviction and initiative. The text, of course, give us a religious explanation for this commitment. Saul was inspired by the ideal of zeal for the Lord or his law. The picture we are given is of a tent maker who spends his free time and all his spare change wandering around persecuting strangers who disagree with him. Not that this is unusual for someone inspired by religious motives to commit violence. If Paul did not work for the high priest, however, then how did he support himself? How did he support himself in Jerusalem? In Jerusalem. What did Saul actually do for a living? Did he persecute people and make tents in his spare time, or was it the other way around? That's a good question. What was he doing? And why did those in charge of the prison system go along with this tent maker's hobby? Why would the authorities spend time, money, and manpower on feeding this man's personal prisoners, especially if he was not acting under an official authority? Were there any other people with this hobby in Jerusalem? Did the prisons accommodate everyone they caught? Were they paid a bounty? Were any of these people trained in interrogation techniques, self-defense, or the restraining of prisoners? Would a police force as unmodernized as that run by the temple even rely on amateurs? Surely there must have been some more definite official connection between the high priest and Saul. Not merely that the high priest was called upon to underwrite Saul's project. The answer to how Saul made his living is solved if we were acting as an agent for the high priest. If he were acting, read it again. The answer to how Saul made his living is solved if he were acting as an agent for the high priest or the Romans. One opinion is that the plan to send persecutors to Damascus was that of the high priest and not Saul. His activities as a foreign person of non-Jewish extraction or a diaspora Jew are made clear. He is just the sort of person who may have entered the service of the high priest and engaged in police activities or undercover work, which a native-born Jew or a pious Pharisee might have rejected. Pious Jews in Jerusalem were resentful of Roman hegemony and of the seducing, quizzling regime which did its bidding. All that was written about Paul later was aimed at attributing to him a more glamorous origin than he in fact had. Scholars have tried to explain away this phase of Saul's career as motivated by religious zeal rather than the more banal motive of earning a living using whatever unsavory means were open to an immigrant from Asia Minor. Certainly, the pious reader does not want to have Saul connected to the Roman persecutors. Y'all getting some understanding? Give me some tools up in the chat, man. Give me some tools up in the chat if y'all getting some understanding. That deal straight called that boy a non-factor. Huh? Right here. Wish I could highlight that. That'd be tight. No, you can't. And engaged in police activities or undercover work, which a native-born Jew or a pious Pharisee might have rejected. His activities, Paul's activities as a foreign person of non-Jewish extraction or a diaspora Jew. Sound like they know he ain't even no bro. Sound like they already know. Look at this. Saul and the high priest. There is also something very puzzling about the way in which Saul's relation to the high priest is described. As it is written, Saul appears as a private citizen who wishes to make citizens' arrests according to some plan of his own. He approaches the high priest for the requisite authority to persecute in Damascus. It has been suggested that the plan for the mission to Damascus was the high priest and not Saul's. The whole incident needs to be considered in the light of probabilities and current conditions. For one thing, where did Saul meet the persecutors who accompanied him on that trip? There is some confusion and doubt in the mind of certain scholars about whether the Sanhedrin or the high priest or chief priest were involved in the persecution of the followers of Jesus. Sometimes the high priest, a Sadducee, is mentioned alone, and sometimes the Sanhedrin, made up of Pharisees, is coupled with him, as if the two are inseparable. On at least two occasions cited in Acts, the high priest was outvoted by the Pharisees in the Sanhedrin. On both occasions, the Pharisees were opposing an attempt to persecute the followers of Jesus. Portraying the high priest and the Sanhedrin as having identical aims is one of the suspect features of these accounts. In Acts 5, Saul claims to have voted against the Christians on trial for their lives before the Sanhedrin, when, in fact, in the graphically described trial of Peter before the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, led by Gamaliel, voted for the release of Peter. Right, exactly. We believe Saul worked for the high priest and the Sadducees, and by extension, he worked in Rome's interests. or even as a Roman agent. Why not? Might as well come on outside. He's a Roman agent. Y'all look at that. It's a show called the Berlin Station. It may be on Amazon or something like that, but it's called the Berlin Station, right? And what they do, they just make up a whole new identity on paper, right? They looking for a cat named Thomas Shaw the whole time. It's this dude named I believe Horace or something. You dig? Like running the office the whole time. He got a whole alter ego out here named Tom Shaw that don't nobody know. So y'all check that out. It's called the Berlin Station. It's crazy how they run intelligence today, man. It's nuts. All right, now look at this. We believe Saul worked for the high priest and the Sadducees, and by extension, he worked in Rome's interest or even as a Roman agent or representative within the high priest ranks. That interest was to squash any messianic ideas with nationalistic undertones. Being part of a religion that believed in a Messiah was not a crime, but believing a living person was the Messiah and that this person would lead Judea to independence was a hanging offense. Hanging from a cross, that is. It was an active and blatant rejection of the political status quo, which the Romans controlled. Ooh-wee. The Nazarenes. The Nazarenes. That's right, Hezekiah. Herodians, Flavians, Alexanders of Egypt, all agents of Rome. All agents of Rome. The Nazarene. Bottom of page 65. We're in this book today. Excellent book. I actually have it. And we're dealing with it from, we already know they was all tied in. We already know they was part of the court. We already know these cats had Roman citizenship. Y'all don't mean they working for them. They working for them. All right, so y'all check this book out when y'all get a chance. Excellent, excellent read, man. Excellent, excellent read. You feel me? Let's get back down to the bottom of page 65. It is clear that modern scholars cannot agree on whom Saul was persecuting, why he did it, or for whom he was working. One's answers depends upon how one identifies Saul. Is he a Pharisee, a diaspora Jew, a God-fearer, or a pagan? How one chooses also affects whom one identifies as his enemies. Another belief is that Saul persecuted only Hellenistic Christianity because he saw it as an attack on the law. Others believe that Saul persecuted only Hellenistic Jewish Christians because of their opposition to the temple. And rejection of Torah, also their act of proclamation as Messiah of the Jews. An actual deceiver who had led the people astray. It has also been suggested that before Saul's own conversion, he persecuted those who allowed Gentiles to become Christians without undergoing circumcision, and that after his conversion, he himself was persecuted by those same people. This line of thought wants to define the seminal historical circumstance in the hostility between Christians and Jews as the conflict over whether Gentiles could be converted to Christianity without undergoing circumcision. These presumptions are all predicated on accepting Saul as a Pharisee who had an interest in protecting the law. While the conflict over whether Gentiles could be converted to Christianity without undergoing circumcision arose later. This was not yet an issue in the early Nazarenes, at the time when Saul was persecuting them. The earliest hostility was between the Saducean/Roman alliance and the nationalistic wing of the Nazarenes. Oh boy. You see who the ops are? The Saducean/Roman alliance and the nationalistic wing of the Nazarenes. Salute all the freedom fighters that dropped fighting for what they knew was right, man. You dig? Now that we know 2020, we know war come against us, get the hell up out of there. You dig? The Creator is not sanctioning no type of warfare at all. Look at this. Christianity's separation from its parent, Judaism, occurred much later. And indeed, one of the most divisive later issues was whether circumcision was to be required of Gentile converts. In Saul's letters, there is no evidence for a shift or turning point in Jewish-Christian relations. This is a much later theme inserted into Acts. The description in Acts of the deteriorating relations between Christians and Jews comes from a much later context, when the question of whether Gentiles could be accepted into the church without being circumcised, that is to say, without undertaking the obligations of Judaism, was a much greater problem. We believe Saul was persecuting who? Nazarenes. Why? Because they were Messianic Jews. Yeah, Messianic. All right. All right, and that means Numbers 24 about the star that will come out of Jacob and rule the world. That's a Messianic prophecy. Numbers 24, 17 through 19. That whole war was fought around that. 60 years later, in the Bar Kokhba, son of the star, Bar Kokhba revolt. Same thing. And the reason they're Messianic is because they expected a ruler to come during their time, you understand, to undo them Romans. And that's what they were fighting for. See that? We believe Saul was persecuting Nazarenes because they were Messianic Jews who believed Israel could be freed from Roman rule by the Messiah. The Jewish authorities most answerable to the Romans were the high priests and the seducing quislings. They knew quite well that the Romans did not take accusations of sedition lightly. The Romans had executed Jesus on just such a charge, like 40 others listed by Josephus, and probably many more whose names we will never know. The leader of the Nazarene community was James. That's Yahshua's brother, y'all. The leader of the Nazarene community was James. One scholar draws a portrait of the early community of James as a nationalistic, messianic, priestly, and xenophobic sect of ultra-legal pietism. That's a way to say it. Another author refers to them as Lubavitcher Christianity. To us, they appear to be fanatics. It has been. Right, page 67. It has been pointed out. It has been pointed out that this view is an embarrassment and a disappointment to modern readers, because we seem to expect the figures of the Gospels to be refreshingly modernistic and Christian. They were not. They were not. Jewish Christianity was part and parcel of the sectarian milieu, which included the Essenes, the Zealots, the Nazarenes, the Nazarites, later known as Ebionites, Elkizites, Sabaeans, and Mandeans. Most of us ain't never even heard of them. See that? Most of us ain't even heard of them. I see that. To read it again. Jewish Christianity was part and parcel of the sectarian milieu. They call people sectarian like the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Hamas. They call them sectarian. All right. Was part and parcel of the sectarian milieu, which included the Essenes, the Zealots, the Nazarenes, the Nazarites or Ebionites, Elkizites, Sabaeans, and Mandeans. Although we should point out that such categories are not more than ideal types. These groups were not separated from one another into what one author compares to so many exotic beasts in adjacent, well-marked cages in a theological zoo. We should note that Saul harassed only Jewish believers, but no Gentiles. Y'all heard that? What's up with that? Y'all ever trip? Paul doesn't persecute not one Gentile. Not one. Not one. See that? He didn't persecute not one Gentile. Everybody he persecuted was a bro. We should note that Saul harassed only Jewish believers but no Gentiles. Attacks on Gentiles by Yahudim or attempting to haul them before a panel of synagogue officials would have brought reprisals from the civil authorities. Gentile Messianics could be and were persecuted by other Gentiles. But the Romans only seemed to recognize the danger of Jewish Messianics, and they responded to them swiftly and decisively. If the bros wasn't playing with you, put that blade on you quicker than you can blink. Wasn't playing. So so now, if that's the case, then now we understand the political threat that Yahshua and them, the Nazarene, they were political threats. And Rome had to end that, move swiftly. So obviously these brothers were, they wasn't no chump suckers. Obviously these things were going on, and it was well coordinated because the Messianic brothers was fighting in Judea, Rome, and Alexandria, Egypt. We was revolting against Rome. All Jews devoted to Jesus, not just Hellenistic Jews, were potential targets of episodic and localized persecution led by figures like Saul. Saul's persecution of Messianics was not about admitting Gentile males into the synagogues without requiring circumcision. The synagogues welcomed the God-fearers or Gentiles without demanding circumcision. Many attended synagogues, gave up idol worship, gave their children Jewish names, received instruction in the Torah, observed the Jewish Shabbat and holy days. But never converted or received circumcision. Why then would Saul and his followers persecute Nazarenes, an internal subgroup for following exactly the same practice? Why then would Saul and his followers persecute Nazarenes? Remember, y'all, under the authority of the Romans. So the Nazarenes must have been a political threat enough to have the court or the imperial court in Rome down to their high priest handlers and all that. You know what I mean? So why then would Saul and his followers persecute Nazarenes, an internal subgroup, for following exactly the same practice? The answer lies on the political side of the equation. Jewish persecutors like Saul were acting not just for the Jews, but also for their Roman handlers. Paul's a Roman citizen. Everybody know it. I'll show you in the, before I get down there. That's why this is not hard to believe. This ain't hard to receive. He already admitted he had Roman citizenship, that he was a freeborn Roman. At that. Freeborn. That means both his parents had Roman citizenship. Look at this. One New Testament scholar has seen quite clearly that the fear of Roman retaliation played a role in Saul's repression of Messianics. Everyone in occupied territories knew that Roman reprisals for dangerous or seditious activity could be severe and indiscriminate. Once provoked, boy, this sounds like Palestine and Israel right now. Once provoked, it would fall on the heads of the innocent as well as the guilty. Military action could inflict both immense physical suffering and also profound economic hardship. Pressure on compatriots to avoid provocative behavior was severe. We may conclude that a Jewish persecution of the Nazarenes did occur in Jerusalem and elsewhere. Now see that? We may conclude that Jewish persecution of the Nazarenes did occur in Jerusalem and where? And elsewhere. It was always about us. And remember, during the 24th arc cycle, y'all, the Essenes, the Nazarenes, those were the ones with the light. Those were the ones with the light. Well, I find it quite ironic, or marvelous that before I even got to read WASPI, I went down the Nazarene Essene path and read all their literature. Read all of it. Got books like this and all that. It's like, dang, just trying to piece it all together. Like, dang, what is this? Okay, that's what this means. All right, Jewish persecution of the Nazarenes did occur in Jerusalem and elsewhere. Although we are unable to verify very well the claim in Acts that the leaders of the Nazarenes were persecuted by Jewish officialdom, it makes perfect sense. The persecution that Saul refers to must have been going on for some time, and Saul was part of it, right? Look at this. The later communities to whom Paul wrote letters were not familiar with the political religious situation in Judea. Right, it was a political powder keg, man. It was a nightmare. They might well believe the story that the Pharisees and the followers of Jesus were at odds with one another. Gentiles especially could be made to believe that the opposition to Paul's movement was led by the Pharisees. This explanation was first advanced by Paul himself in his letters. In these, he did not even reveal that he was born in Tarsus. He carefully fostered the impression, without actually saying so, that he was a native-born Judean, a Pharisee, and thus a persecutor. This story was afterwards incorporated into Acts. Look at that. Shout out to my brother Cal P. He been saying it the whole time. God, look, we looking at everything you looking at now has been backdated. Things were written down after events happened. It was backdated. You know what I mean? Y'all going back upstairs, okay? Action. All right. Look at this. We must identify clearly. Now, who are Saul's enemies? What's wrong with Joe? Why? Come here. We must identify clearly the group we think opposed Saul directly following the execution of Jesus in 33 CE. His movement counted roughly 120 members. Acts 1 and 15. These people referred to themselves as Nazarenes. They were also called the followers of the way. Their leaders were James, the brother of Jesus, and Peter. Trying to get up here. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. All right. All right, it says right here. It says right here, the book of Acts does not disguise the fact that the Nazarenes of Jerusalem in those days, immediately following the death of Jesus, consisted of observant Jews for whom the Torah was still in force. Jesus' followers regarded services in the temple were still valid. They attended temple for daily worship and had easy access to the synagogues, as did Saul. Even the alleged prophecy included in John 16 and 2 that they shall put you out of the synagogue shows that Jesus and his followers in the early days, hold on, y'all. In the early days were accepted as attenders at the synagogue. They were still an integral part of Judaism. The expression the Jerusalem church, therefore, is an anachronism. It's an anachronism. These people did not make an effort to set up a new central place of worship. Although the Jesus movement had a system of leadership of its own, it did not think of itself as a rival priesthood to the temple hierarchy. Every Jewish movement, including the Pharisees, had its own internal leaders, so quote-unquote rabbis. Look at this. Hold on, little joke. Hold on, y'all. Put this on for this little joke. All right, here's Jeremiah. Do your thing. Here, go upstairs, okay? Come on. There you go. All right? None of your business. But this was in addition to the priesthood of the temple, not instead of it. Only much later did the Christian church proper inaugurate its own priesthood and facilities. Indeed, the later Christians using Pauline ideas produced a proliferation of churches, while in Judaism only one sacramental center was allowed in the Jerusalem temple. In the way Acts describes the history of the Jesus movement shortly after the crucifixion, there is little evidence of Romans and or Jewish police officers hunting the movement down. This could mean that there was no persecutions because the group was behaving according to a deal struck with the authorities. So out here making deals, huh? They were doing plea deals and all that back then, y'all. Nothing new. struck a deal with the authorities or in fear of the authorities, or that the story misrepresented the conflict of the movement with the authorities. The latter seems more likely, since it would have been almost unthinkable that the government did not monitor, persecute, imprison, and or execute these people whose leader had just been executed or for being a threat to the state. At the very least, these men could still have been angry over the execution of Jesus, which would have been sufficient reason to monitor their movements. Moreover, a little later, Saul is portrayed as a persecutor. Hold on, y'all. Hold on 1 second. 1 second, y'all. Oh, wait, boy. Short leggers, no, they be tripping around this dig. All right, where we at? Page 69. Let me put this out right here. All right. Where's we at? We on page 69? Okay, man. Okay. Right here. At the very least, these men could still have been angry over the execution of Jesus, which would have been sufficient reason to monitor their movements. Moreover, a little later, Saul is portrayed as a persecutor of the movement. There is no evidence to suggest that there was ever a lapse in the government's persecution activities between the crucifixion of Jesus and Saul's career as a persecutor. So there's no evidence that the government switched up its protocol, or switched up its stop. It's standard operation of procedure. It stopped. It ain't switched none of that up. None of it. Right? Look at this. King of the Jews. It seems likely that the Nazarene movement was fundamentally anti-Roman. You heard this? To begin with, since Jesus claimed the title King of the Jews and had been executed for sedition. His followers continued to operate in the name of this Jesus, and his family carried on the tradition. His family did. The Gospels may say that Jesus chose Peter as the leader of the church, but the Nazarenes, after Jesus' death, considered James, the brother of Jesus, their leader. That's Acts the 15th chapter. James is actually Jesus' biological brother. The story was simply what? Rewritten. There's a lot of backdating, overwrites, rewrites. There's a lot going on, man. It's a lot going on. The description of Peter's election in Matthew 16, 15 to 19 was combined with a 2nd century legend locating Peter's death in Rome. This version provides support for the claim of the Roman Catholic Church to supremacy over Christendom. In the new version of the story, Peter was the first bishop of Rome, from whom all succeeding popes received their position. This was the church playing power politics. Y'all hear this? This was the church playing power politics, and they writing all this shit down way after it happened. See, we the victims of the translators. It's us. We victims. Here we go arguing with each other. You know what I mean? You don't even know the underhanded tactics, right? The political propaganda, right, that has taken place the past 2,200 years, right? Now it's running on automatic. You're Hellenized. You feel me? And don't think nothing of it. This was the church playing power politics. To Jesus, a Jew, the idea that his teaching would have its administrative It's administrative. Look at this, y'all. It's administrative center in Rome, the capital of the military power against which his whole life was directed, would have seemed astonishing and dismaying. If indeed Saul wrote these letters about himself, he is looking back from a distance over 2 decades. Backdating. Cal, you just said it. Didn't even know he was going to run up on it, huh, big homie? If indeed Saul wrote these letters about himself, he is looking back from a distance of over 2 decades on his persecution of the Jesus followers, and he contrasts that vicious episode of his life with the change that the spirit of Jesus had allegedly effected in him. The one who was formerly persecuting us is now proclaiming the faith he once tried to destroy, Galatians 1:23. This picture sketched by Acts, however, simply cannot be reconciled with Saul's own account, or according to one scholar, with the historical situation of Saul's own time. He did not proclaim the faith he once tried to destroy. He did not proclaim the faith he once tried to destroy. Rather, he tried to destroy it with words instead of weapons. Always remember his initial mission. Always remember his initial mission. It was to destroy the Nazarene movement, to destroy the Messianic bruise, right? And he sent in by his Roman handlers, his Roman overlords. You see, and all of his backdated, and even when you check Josephus, checking. It's a cat named Saul in the 1st century, related to Herod and cool with the high priest. What is this, a coinky-dink? Like, what is going on here? COINTELPRO destroys with words, not weapons. Espionage. You know what I mean? Propaganda. Look at it. The gospel seemed to agree with Saul's letters as against Acts on, read again. The gospel seemed to agree with Saul's letters as against Acts on the matter of synagogue lashings as a punishment for Christians. In Matthew 23-24, Jesus prophesies that some will be flogged in the synagogues and carried from city to city. In Matthew 10:17, Jesus also predicts to his disciples that they will deliver you to councils. That's the Sanhedrin. You know what I mean? They're going to indict y'all. And in their synagogues, they will flog you. These references to flogging in synagogues certainly lead us in the direction of agreement with Saul's letters about the nature of Jewish persecution of Nazarenes, as opposed to the version in Acts. How the story got changed. Let's get it. How the story got changed. Y'all getting some understanding? Give me your one up in the chat, man. Give me your one up in the chat. All right, if anybody just now chiming in, this is the book we going over. Right here. Got this book about almost 3 years ago. Excellent read. Excellent read. It slows you down. Say, hold on, I didn't even ask that question. Yeah, who he get his authority from? And who are they working with? And what is this really about? All right, so that's what we in right now. Check it out. It's a good book. I don't know how to say the names of the authors. Thuis, Thegis, Vosqueline, and Rosemary Sheldon are the authors. All right. So if y'all just tap in with us. This is what we reading out of right now. And oh boy, on that front cover looks suspect. He looked like you listen to me. You can't trust him at all. How the story got changed. The story in Acts was written much later. Did y'all hear this, man? Backdating. The story in Acts was written much later than the time of Saul and reflects a political situation that existed after the fall of Jerusalem at the end of the Great Jewish War with the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. The tension between two Jewish groups, one group intent on preserving the past intact and the other intent on incorporating Jesus into a new faith tradition, grew bitter. Meanwhile, the Roman authorities represented the Palestinian Jews and were bent on making them pay in every possible way. Read it again. Meanwhile, the Roman authorities resented the Palestinian Jews and were bent on making them pay in every possible way for their insurrection. The few surviving Nazarenes were scattered after the war. You heard that? Most of us dropped. Only a few that was left scattered after the war. And many Christians in response sought to separate themselves. Rome came against the real ones, man. Now it's like separate ourselves from that militancy and that. But they the real ones. They the ones that stood on it. They stood on business. The few surviving Nazarenes were scattered after the war, and many Christians in response sought to separate themselves in the minds of the Roman rulers from the nationalist Jews and their unwise war. They tried to escape both. Look at this. Sought to separate themselves in the minds of the Roman rulers from the nationalist Jews and their unwise war. See, that's them over there. That ain't us. They tried to escape both the wrath and the virulent anti-Semitism that the Romans had loosed upon the land. The book of Acts is inconsistent with itself in that it describes Paul as violently opposed to Christianity because of his deep attachment to Phariseeism. And yet it also describes the Pharisees as being friendly towards the early Jesus followers, standing up for them and saving their lives. The whole bias in Acts is anti-Pharisee. Paul is being portrayed as a virulent persecutor when he was a Pharisee. Then he becomes victim of punishment by Jews, taking to mean Pharisees, when he converts, 2 Corinthians 11:24. So no one comes away from Acts with any good impression of the Pharisees, but rather with the same negative impressions one gets from the Gospels. Acts stresses Saul's Pharisee background because its author wants to show the continuity between Judaism and Christianity. Saul is saying that when he was a Pharisee, he mistakenly regarded the early Jesus followers as heretics who had departed from true Judaism. But after his conversion, he took the opposite view, that Christianity was the true Judaism. All his training as a Pharisee, he wishes to say, all his study of scripture and tradition really leads to the acceptance of Jesus as the Messiah prophesied in the Old Testament. What really happened? Saul has been regarded as a tormented, confused, vindictive Gentile who lied about his Phariseeism and left a legacy of anti-Semitism. At the very least, we believe Saul was an opportunist who came to Jerusalem from Tarsus, possibly sent by the Romans, who found employment with the temple guard and came to the attention of the high priest as a zealous, ambitious young man who was willing to do anything, including persecuting people, to curry favor with the establishment. He persecuted the Nazarenes because he was told to do so by the Sadducees, who were afraid the more nationalistic members of the group might end up the same way as Jesus did. And this time, the movement might bring down the wrath of Rome on the rest of the city. This scenario had happened before. On his way to Damascus, however, something happened to Saul, a transformation, or so he said. His sudden change of behavior would have vast repercussions for the Jews, for the Christians, and for the Romans. Ooh-wee-wee. Ooh-wee-wee. Y'all check that book out when you get a chance. I want to read through some of that. I want to read through some of that so y'all can see what's really going on around here. You can really see what's going on around here. All right, y'all get some understanding. Throw a one up in the chat, man. Throw a one up in the chat. If y'all getting this understanding. All right. Let's go back to the doc. Got to scroll all the way down. They keep throwing. I heard that Paul was Roman. You feel me? They keep throwing that out here. Paul was Roman. Paul was Roman. Let me get to the bottom of this so y'all can see. All right, this is on one of our Google Docs that we have. Saul of Tarsus. and his Roman and Herodian connections. Oh, wait. See, we arrive at some of the same conclusions dude arrived at in the book we just read. All right. Let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got here, and then I'm gonna slide on out, man. Look at this. Salute Herodian, my kinsman. This is Romans 16 and 11. This is Paul. Paul is admitting that he's related to the Herodians, specifically Herodian, his kinsman. He's writing this to his dispatch in Rome. Salute Herodian, my kinsman. Greet them that be of the household of Narcissus, which are in the Lord. Romans 16:11. Saul of Tarsus. Notice Saul's a relative of Herod the Great, the impostor Edomite king of Judah. Right? Even in the book we just read, it was saying that he wasn't no real Jew, if you want to call it that. Watch this. We got the parallel New Testament. All right. We got the parallel New Testament, so you can understand. Romans 16 and 11. All right. You don't think, oh, he's just talking. He really ain't related to them. We're here. This is Romans 16 and 11. All right. We got 3 New Testament translations that are actually older than your King James Bible, and comparing them side by side. This is a good one too. I go get this stuff. Type in the parallel New Testament, comparing 3 popular translations in parallel columns. Romans 16:11. Up close. What it say? As the piece of Herodian, my who? My relative. Yeah. He bloodline. He bloodline Saul of Tarsus, Herodian and Roman agent. Roman intelligence. You see that? Herodian and Roman spy. He telling you he related to them. He's related. So if he's related to Herod and them, then he's not even no brute. See, the Herodians claimed Israelite. They converted to Judaism, quote unquote, and claimed Israelite heritage from that point forward. You don't got Herod on record claiming to be an Edomite at all. You know what I mean? So once they took on the identity of Israel, that's what they became, according to them. This right here, he's saying that the Herods are his family, y'all, his relative. He's bloodline related. Look at this. Not only is Saul of Tarsus a bloodline relative of Herod the Great, he also had Roman citizenship. Did any of the apostles have Roman citizenship? No. Did Yahshua have Roman citizenship? No. Acts 22, y'all, 25 to 29. Y'all better tell these boys I do's this. Tell these boys I do's this. Bag him down, boy. Bag him down. And as they bound him with thongs, Saul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? This is what Paul is saying. Y'all about to beat me, but is it lawful for you to beat me? I'm a Roman. Look at this. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, yeah. And the chief captain answered, with great sum obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, but I was free born. Bag drop, boy. That's ball game. That's ball game. He not only saying he's a Roman, he's saying I'm a freeborn Roman. That's ball game. Then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. And the chief captain also was afraid, after he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound. See this? Now, how can Saul of Tarsus claim Israelite heritage, have Herod the Great as an ancestor, and be a free-born Roman citizen? Watch this. Source, scriptoclassic.org. You come with the sources. You come with the sources. All right, right here. About July 47, Julius Caesar came from Egypt to Syria. And during his short stay there, settled the affairs of the province and rewarded those states and individuals who had given him military aid in the Alexandrian War. What's going on in Alexander? Egypt. You got the Messianic Jews banging against the Greeks, banging against the Egyptians. And you had Philo and them who was trying to keep the peace. Look at this. Hyrcanus was appointed ethnarch of the Jews and high priest, with all the traditional privileges accompanying the latter office according to Jewish law. Moreover, both those offices were to be hereditary, meaning whether you were king or a priest, you had to be a bloodline Judean. Look at this. Or Israelite. The Jews were promised autonomy and allowed to live, or more precisely, to be judged and to administer their internal affairs according to their own law. Thus, Caesar put an end to Judea's status as a subject state and raised her political and legal position to that of a free state. So the cats that was leading knew that. You know what I mean? That's why they was against the brothers that was fighting. You feel me? They like, man, we didn't have our status changed by Rome. We no longer a slave state, right? We're a free state, right? We got our positions, and we getting all our fancy amenities and laying on the plushest feathered pillows and having a $5 horse throw grapes down your throat. You see that? You don't want to lose all that. As part of this arrangement, the Jerusalem Sanhedrin was restored to all its traditional powers, including the exclusive right to judge criminal cases, which means they could put you to death. One of the individuals whom Julius Caesar, rewarded for his courage and excellent military record in the Alexandrian War was who? Antipater, the father of Herod. Paul says, salute Herodian, my kinsmen. Antipater got awarded for his great courage in the Alexandrian War by Julius Caesar. It just so happened he's the father of Herod the Great. Was Antipater the father of Herod, to whom he granted who? Roman citizenship. Now, if Paul is related to them, that's how he got it. Roman citizenship. And I have discussed elsewhere the nature of this immunity by comparing it with the privileges granted by Octavian between the years 42 and 36 to Seleucus of Rhodes. In that paper, I put forward the suggestion that the privileges Julius Caesar granted to Antipater and his descendants, him and everybody related to him. What was the privilege that Antipater got, y'all? Roman citizenship. And that went to him and his descendants. See that? Or the same as those given later to Seleucus and family. Hey, that's what's doing, man. Go. Hurry up. So you see that because of his courage in the Alexandrian War, Julius Caesar granted Antipater and his descendants immunity and Roman citizenship. Y'all see that? Or granted them immunity via Roman citizenship. If you see MALAKIMAC ain't making none of this up, y'all, give me a 9 up in the chat, man. If you see I ain't making it up, and you see that Antipater, Herod's father, because of his courage in the war with Julius Caesar, him and his descendants were given Roman citizenship. If you see that, give me a 9 up in the chat, man. Let's work. I ain't making none of this stuff up. Making none of this up. As we see, Paul is a bloodline relative of Antipater, the father of Herod the Great. This would explain why Saul told the captain of the guard that he was a freeborn Roman citizen. To be freeborn means you didn't have to earn citizenship, and that your parents were both born free. The privilege is solely based on the actions of your ancestors. Source. Wikipedia, Roman citizenship. What types of citizenships are there? Look at this. Remember what Paul said. He's a freeborn Roman, right? Citizenship in Rome could be acquired through various means. To be born, to be freeborn, to be born as a citizen required that both parents be free citizens of Rome. Ball game. That means Paul, father and mother were Edomites, related to Herod. In order for Paul to say he's a freeborn Roman, that means both his parents were free citizens of Rome. Well, the Herodians were granted immunity by the Roman Empire via Roman citizenship, starting with Antipater and everyone related to him. So his great-granddaughter got together and had somebody named Paul, Saul of Tarsus. He just told on himself, said he's freeborn. Now look at this. In order for Saul to be freeborn, to be a freeborn Roman, which citizenship means that both his parents had blood relations to Antipater, the father of Herod the Great. Let's look at Antipater's family tree. Is Saul in there? Quick note, Saul's Greek name is Saulus. Close family of Conspirator be Antipater, or son of Antipater. All right. Yeah, you got Herod the Great right there. Right. Conspirator, Bernice. They're going to mattress back. Look at old mattress back Bernice over there. There goes Saul right there. There he is. Right. And this shouldn't be that hard to understand. All right. The documentary in the beginning shows you he falls. Right. His own letters show you, even after his conversion, that he was hostile toward the real apostles. He was totally against them, cursing them, doing all type of madness. You see? Then he come outside and tell you that the Herodians are his kinsmen. Well, we got a Saul right in Herod the Great or Antipater's lineage. And Antipater and all these people right here were given Roman citizenship. 1 + 1 is 2 every time, y'all. 1 + 1 is 2 every time. There he is, old lawless Saul. The family tree of Saul is based on Josephus's work, War of the Jews, Antiquity of the Jews. All right, let's read some of this. Let's see if Saul's somewhere to be found. You know what I mean? Let's see if Josephus documented though. So what they're gonna try to tell you is, oh no, that was 4 decades later. Y'all they're backdating all this. You think all this a coincidence? We got the man related to Herod, got Roman citizenship on Antipater's family tree. You did? He admitting he's a freeborn Roman, right in the Bible. Look what some of this Josephus say about Saul. And now Jesus, the son of Gamaliel, became the successor of Jesus, the son of Damnaeus, in the high priesthood, which the king had taken from the other. The king, y'all, around that time is Agrippa, your grandson of Herod, right? Had taken from the other, on which account a sedition arose between the high priests with regard to one another. For they got together, look what they did. They got together, and this is verified in Acts 4:1-6. They got together bodies of the boldest sort of the people, and frequently came from reproaches to throwing of stones at each other. But Ananias was too hard for the rest by his riches, which enabled him to gain those that were most ready to receive. Conspirator also and Saulus did themselves get together. There goes Saul. Look at this. There he is. Conspirator also and Saul did themselves get together a multitude of wicked wretches. And this because, get out of there. And this because they were of the royal family. And so they obtained favor among them because of their kindred to who? Agrippa. So you got you a Saul and Josephus that's related to the king Agrippa, who is the grandson of Herod, who is the son of Antipater. And he's causing all type of havoc in Jerusalem. And you still think this ain't Saul of Tarsus? It's a different one, huh? Right? They're kindred. He related. But still they use violence with the people and were ready, very ready to plunder those that were weaker than themselves. And from that time, it principally came to pass that our city was greatly disordered and that all things grew worse and worse among us. Wait. Look at this right here. Romans 16 and 11. Still in Josephus. So the men of the power, perceiving that the sedition was too hard for them to subdue, and that the danger which would arise from the Romans would come upon them first of all, endeavored to save themselves and sent ambassadors, some to Flourish, the chief of whom was Simon, the son of Ananias, and others to Agrippa. There he go again. There he go to Agrippa, among whom the most eminent were Saul and Antipas and Costobarus, who were of who? Who they of? The king's kindred. Sit your monkey ass down, boy. Paul said he was related to the Herodians in Romans 16:11. Salute Herodian, my kinsman. Well, Agrippa is an Herodian, meaning he's a son of Herod the Great, who's a son of Antipater. Y'all see that? Wow. You're making this stuff up, Malaki. That's what they say. Look at this. Acts 18, 12, and 27. And you got this Saul right here in the same places as the Saul in the Bible. Same places. At what point do you call a spade a spade? At what point do you call a spade a spade? After this calamity had befallen Cestius, many of the most eminent of the Jews swam away from the city, as from a ship when it was going to sink. Costobarus, therefore, and Saul, who were brethren together with Philip, the son of Jacomus, who was the commander of King Agrippa's forces, and Herodian, ran away from the city and went to Cestius. Look at it. But then how Antipas, who had been besieged with them in the king's palace, but would not fly away with them, was afterwards slain by the seditious. We shall relate hereafter. However, Cestius sent Saul and his friends at their own desire to who? Achaia. You got Paul in Acts 18, verses 12 through 27, y'all, in the same place. Same place. To Nero, to inform him of the great distress they were in, and to lay the blame of their kindling the war upon Florus, as hoping to alleviate his own danger by provoking his indignation against Florus. Look at this. So he only got he don't only have the same behavior. He ain't only related to the same people. You understand? It ain't just that. He got the same name. He got the exact same name. And he's in the same places. What's up with your boy Epaphroditus? Huh? Nero's secretary, Josephus's Patreon, and Paul's homeboy. I suppose that by my books, look at this. I suppose that by my books of the antiquities of the Jews, most excellent Epaphroditus. Remember that? Remember that name? I have made it evident to those who pursue them that our Jewish nation is of very great antiquity and had a distinct subsistence of its own originally. And also I have therein declared how we came to inhabit this country wherein we now live. Those antiquities contain the history of 5,000 years and are taken out of our sacred books, but are translated by me, this is Josephus, y'all, into who? The Greek tongue. Flavius Josephus is writing Greek Gospels and Greek history concerning Hebrews from Rome in the Greek tongue. Sure about this, y'all? According to his own admission. So when we tell you the Gospels don't come out till after the war with Rome, from Rome, overseas, in the Greek tongue, who you think in on this? Whose literary team is being used to compose Greek literature? He just told you it's him. Him and his whole literary team. Those antiquities contain a history of 5,000 years and are taken out of our sacred books, but are translated by me into the Greek tongue. Boy, ball game. Ball game. Ball game. Boy, what is you talking about? Look at this. Why is Josephus mentioning Nero Caesar's secretary, Epaphroditus? Why is it that Saul and Epaphroditus are longtime friends? Saul not only has citizenship, he's connected from the Herodian appointed high priest all the way up to the household of Nero Caesar. He connected. To hell with the French connection. Saul has the Roman and Herodian connection. Philippians 2:24. But I trust in the Lord that I also myself shall come shortly. Yet I suppose it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother. That's the same Epaphroditus Josephus is writing to, claiming that he the one writing all the Hebrew and the Greek in Rome. Now, how is this nigga cool with Paul? Yet I suppose it necessary to send it to you, Epaphroditus, my brother and companion in labor and fellow soldier, but your messenger, your angel, and he that ministered to my wants. Look at this. Now look what Paul also writes in Philippians 4:22. All the saints salute you, chiefly they that are who? Caesar's household. Paul the ops, man. Saul of Tarsus is the ops. There is no way around it. That's classic Roman intelligence. Let me stop the screen real quick. Let me know if y'all got some understanding today, man. It was real short. You know, your bro been traveling. Got off the road a little earlier, a couple days ago, getting it done, but really want to tap in with the fam and, you know, just go back over some of this stuff. Go over that source I showed y'all with that book. You dig? And it's clear, at least to me, that we're dealing with some type of Roman intelligence, Roman spy network. You know what I mean? That instead of destroying the Israelite or the Messianic movement through weapons, they start using words. You feel me? Ooh-wee. So, I mean, even off his own letters, though, that's the thing about it. It ain't like we ain't using what's supposedly his letters. You dig? So I'm glad y'all got some understanding. If y'all got some understanding, throw a vortex up in the chat. You feel me? It was a whole Messianic Nazarene movement. That's right, bro. Yeah. Shit, what y'all think about Josephus admitting in his argument against Apion to Epaphroditus that I'm the one writing it in Greek. It was translated by me into Greek. That's ugly. That's ugly. See vortices and all that. 2.5 hours a day. Wasn't long. You feel me? But, you know, a lot of times you hear, man, what should we do now that, you know, all this is compromised? Look, man, learn the character of your creator. That's it. You feel me? Either the Most High Creator is omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful, knows all, sees all, ever-present. You understand? Unstoppable. Right? Or he's angry and jealous, short-sighted, vindictive, bloody. You feel me? Can't control his emotions. Certain gods he get beat up by. Certain men he get beat up by. Like, he's like, you got to know when you reading Bible or reading anything, if what you reading in this particular passage is of the omnipotent, ever-present, all-knowing creator, or are you reading about a deity, a God? You feel me? You gotta, you know, and that way you can read through anything and use your spiritual eye to properly discern. So, no, that ain't got nothing to do with the creator. How you know? It's talking about death and war and killing and slavery and, you know, all that ugly stuff that we complain about. You feel me? But if it's about inspiring others to righteousness, love, good works, remember, it's real simple with the creator. Remove every idol out of your heart. Create a game. All right? And love your neighbor as yourself. All right? That's the quickest way to get you a bomb spiritual grade. It's the quickest way to resurrect. You understand? And you got to start correcting your stuff now. If you, hey, look, either now or you're going to have to get out later. You dig? I figured what we holding off for? I might as well get started now. You know how much stuff we got to clean up, man? You know how many times, how many years we've been worming on our belly to a deity? Right? It's a lot to clean up. So I figured we might as well start now. What is we waiting for? Might as well start now, man. You dig? And get some understanding on this. And look, let me show y'all just so you can understand what we talking about. All right. I'm gonna share this and get up out of here. Let's bring it all the way home. Let's bring it all the way home. All right, this is the book of discipline in OSP. Shout out to the Creator Gang, man. Brothers and sisters been bringing this OSP out, boy, and then shook every false god kingdom around this deal. So if any of y'all having any type of problems in the house or any of that, y'all, what you expect? We've been around here dropping gods. You understand? So look, if your spouse ain't girded up enough, you better believe. You understand? Drew Johnson demons are gonna start manifesting. You feel me? So keep yourself tight, man. Stand on business. Stand on business. You know what I mean? I know it get hard sometimes, man. You know what I mean? I know it get hard sometimes. You feel like, man, there ain't never no type of peace. But you got to stand on business. You know what I mean? And use some type of wisdom. Use some type of wisdom. All right, now look, this is the NOSPs in the book of discipline. And trip off this. God reveals who he is. Now trip off this. And anybody that read OSP that deal with the Creator Gang know this. This is one-on-one with us. All right. And again, this is very important because if the God is false that you've been worshiping, and everything you've been doing is irrelevant. This is the word from the organic heaven. Hear the words of your God, oh man. I am your brother. That don't say your father. It says, I am your brother. So God is your brother. So when you hear us say, y'all hear us saying peace to the God or peace to the gods, we talking about y'all. God on here is saying, I'm your brother. I am your brother, risen from mortality. So God was once a living man, risen from mortality to a holy place in heaven, profit in my wisdom and be admonished by my love. Verse 3, for as I am your elder brother. See, so God is telling you, I'm not your father. Don't worship me. I'm your brother. You know what I mean? And if he was a one-time living man, y'all, then that makes God an ancestor. God is an ancestor. You're just not supposed to worship God. Worship your ancestor. You ain't supposed to be doing none of that. All right? For as I am your elder brother, so shall it be with you to rise also in time to come and look back to mortals and call them to the exalted heavens of the Almighty. So God is saying what I do, you gonna be doing one day. So God's whole purpose is to raise you up so you can take his place and he can continue to witness the Creator's endless creation. You see? So rise up, God. Rise up, goddess. But if you're true, you never worship, nor want the praise. Your whole mission is to raise up your little brothers and sisters so they can advance and you can advance. Look at this. See, you see the clarity? Now look what God also say. He say to the Creator or to Jehovah, all adoration and glory forever. Amen. So God gives praise to the Creator in OSP. Do you have God giving any homage to the Creator in the Bible? at all. Hey, y'all. Do you have it? All right, put it this way. Give me a one up in the chat if you know any place in the Bible that God is paying homage to his creator. Give me a one in the chat. Now, if you don't know any place that God is doing it, give me a two. Give me a one if you can pinpoint a place where God praises the creator. Give me a one. Give me a two if you can't find none of that. Now, look at this. To Jehovah, all adoration and glory forever. Amen. All life. There it is. All life, motion, power, and things seen and unseen, or by and through him. This is what God is saying about his Father, his maker, the creator, our creator. Look at this. Neither is there an angel in heaven so high, nor sufficiently wise to comprehend Jehovah in his entirety, nor to see him as you see your fellow man. So whoever you thought you was worshiping, that you've been reading about, that looked just like a man, that wasn't the creator. You've been deceived. You can't see the creator. You only can see the creator through his work, through creation, through creative functioning and working. You know what I mean? But you can't see the creator of all creation like you looking at me right now. So you got to ask yourself, who was that showed his hindquarters to Moses? Who is that Jacob was wrestling? And this is why you can't see the creator as your fellow man. For the creator is within all, beyond and over all, being ever present in all places, doing by virtue of his presence, quickening all the living, adorable above all things, as the sun is to the light of day, so is the creator to the understanding of all the living. Hey, take y'all ass upstairs. Y'all little jokers is tripping. I'm almost done, man. Go upstairs. Hey, Hezekiah, come grab this orange for him. Hurry up, man. Come on. Y'all too loud, man. I'm live, all right? It's right there. It's right there. I'll be done in a minute, all right? Grab it. Go that way. Grab one and go that way. Let me finish what I'm doing, all right? All right? All right, go ahead. He got your orange, Jeremiah. Go ahead. Go upstairs. These little jokers be tripping, man. These little jokers be wilding. Hezekiah bond Israel put a one. He said he know a place where God reverences the creator. Go ahead and post that scripture where God reverences the creator. For he is with the creators within all, beyond and over all, being ever present in all places, doing by virtue of his presence, quickening all the living, adorable above all things. As the sun is to the light of day, so is the creator to the understanding of all the living, upon which to contemplate is the road of everlasting life, rising in wisdom, love, and power forever. Hear your God, oh man. Hear your God, oh man, and distinguish. Tell the difference. Hear your God, oh man, and distinguish then that the two, God and Jehovah, God and the creator, are not the same one. Nor is your God more than what you shall be in time to come. You heard it? Y'all see this? Yeah, God ain't nothing more than what you're going to become. But there's a difference between the creator of all creation and God. We talking about the creator of every God. You see that? God and the creator are not the same. So when you hear us say creator gang, we talking about the creator of all creation, the creator of every God. The creator ain't a God. God is a one-time man. So God is an ancestor. See that? Nor is your God more than what you shall be in time to come. All right. Verse 17. As the kingdom on earth has a king, and the king is nevertheless immortal, so in like manner is the heavenly place of your God, a kingdom of angels, and the chief over them is God, an angel also. God is an angel. That's what you become when you cross over. He just holds that rank of God or the title of God. Don't get mad. The Bible tells you the same thing. Stephen, before he was stoned, told everybody that the one who gave Moses the law was an angel. It's not the creator. See that? God is an angel. Here we are talking about we worship God. What God you talking about? Any God that is worshipped is a false one. True God don't want your worship. All right. Look what God is telling you right here. Therefore, I am like any other spirit of the dead, a one-time man upon the earth, even as you are at this day, but one within the organic heavens of the earth. Ooh-wee. So just to wrap that up so y'all can understand, anybody new that's listening, now we ain't atheists or nothing over here. We just show the difference between God and the creator. You feel me? And clear up a few things for everybody. You understand? Because if you're worshiping a God, then you ain't worshiping the creator. That's in Psalms, but that's not God worshiping or giving praise to the creator. You talk about the Psalm, which said, therefore God, even your God. Therefore God, even your God has anointed you with gladness or something above your fellows. It did. So it's admitting that there's another God than the one everybody claimed they worshiping. You understand? But where does God praise the creator in the Bible? There's a difference between God and the creator. We know this now. All right. So what does God in the Bible pay homage and praise to the creator? Or the gods, or have we all been assuming that Elohim or God or El is the creator? You see, we're here to clean up the madness for you, clear it up. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. Y'all right on for swinging through, tapping in with your brother. You know, continue to pray for me. So I continue to pray for y'all. You know what I mean? Yeah. It just get real. It just get real sometimes. You feel me? So I just need your prayers. There be certain things brothers and sisters go through that we can't even talk about. You know what I mean? And we can't even talk about this type of, that's how serious it get. It gets serious, you know what I mean? And we run around here dropping false gods, dropping kingdoms. Expect, and don't be surprised when some of the darkest shit start manifesting. You feel me? Because what we doing is shaking up every kingdom of every false god. And y'all, we got trip off this. Not only the false gods, but the high raised angels are paying attention to us. You understand? So you're going to go through, man. We can't expect to be running through dropping kingdoms and dropping false gods and exposing this, and some type of blowback ain't going to come back. You feel me? So make sure you guard your spouses, guard your household, guard them children. You understand? And just make sure you pray for us. You dig? Some of us be at war for real, for real. You understand? And only thing you could do, like for instance, for me, just pray for me. That's it. That's it. Just pray for me. You dig? That it'll be some type of peace. That's all I'm saying. So it's all good. Love is love, family. I pray everybody got some understanding, man. If you got some understanding, go ahead and throw me a vortex up in the chat. I'm about to step on down and finish off this day, man. Finish off this day, man. A lot of hectic, crazy madness going on. But we're going to get through it, though. We built for it. We built for it. You feel me? So give me a vortex in the chat if you got some understanding. Today, name of the class is Roman and Jewish Conspiracies, Saul of Tarsus, Herodian, and Roman Spy. And it seems that the conclusion that the documentary that we watched earlier and the book we read earlier, that we arrived at that same conclusion. You feel me? Not only a dude Herodian or whatever, nigga was spy, man. And that's Rome's way of trying to destroy that light or that Nazarene movement, you know what I mean, through words and not weapons. They already was doing a weapon thing. Bring the words out. Bring the propaganda out. Now today, all you know is Paul. You know what I mean? Just about this. This is how you know something's crazy, right? Can y'all point to one time Paul quoted Jesus? Why, when he was arguing with the apostles, he never quoted Jesus? Like, he ain't quote not one time. You know why? Back to what my brother Cosmo and Kyle said earlier. The Gospels were written after Paul's letters. Paul's letters were written first. You dig? And a lot of that's been backdated. You know what I mean? All that's been backdated. You dig? So Paul never quotes the Gospels, not one time, because they weren't written yet. So chronologically speaking, Paul's letters are first. Paul's letters come before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, chronologically speaking. And how is that possible? It did get real Mickey and tricky, but I'm about to love y'all. Be that love, be that light, be that power. And look, keep your head on the swivel and stay vigilant out here, man. Stay low and keep firing. You did. The creator's with us all. Love all y'all in deed and truth. Love, light, and power to you all. Create a gang. You bring them, we raise them. Big salute to the gods and goddesses out there. Tap in with your brother. I check y'all later. Shalom.